So I was staying with Nick Knight, as you can see, and I'm DJ Fat Tony. And back in 2009, you started a project called Fashion DJs.
Yeah, where we had 3 days at Abbey Road, and we wanted to do it because I've always thought that fashion and music are inextricably linked. There's never one without the other, really.
Never.
So I wanted to do something which brought that to a kind of, in a way, just a sort of recognition of that. So it's the sound of the catwalk. It's the sound of the fashion photography studio. It's what the models listen to. You know, it's when a designer designs what they listen to. That's the sort of genesis of it. That's one side of it. The other side of it, of course, is what people wear when they sing. So what Rihanna wears, what Gaga wears, what, going back in time, what the Rolling Stones wore, what Elvis wore, what Bowie wore. Fashion's always been there in the music world, and music has always been in the fashion world.
With Fashion DJ, you kind of played it down a little bit. It was just over 3 days. I mean, it was an event like no other event.
It was an event.
I at that time was just got sober, and it was like I was about 18 months sober, and Sam McKnight came to me because he was one of the participants.
He was.
And in typical Sam McKnight style, get someone else to do it for him. And I said to me, we're going to do this panel. What do you think we should do? And I said, let's do a desert island disc type vibe around the table. And we, on our section, we had the Pet Shop Boys, we had Boy George sing live in the studio. It was actually amazing because it was kind of, for me, it was kind of one of those moments where we could actually be honest about everything. Those 3 days were chaos, but they were organised chaos, and it was done in such a clever way, because up until that point, fashion should be chaos and music should be chaos. But when it's organised chaos, it's put together, it makes magic.
I think that it was the beginning of it. It was the genesis of it. One reason I want you as the core of this project is because A, of course, you have a deep understanding and deep love of music, which you always have had. B, you have a deep love and deep understanding of fashion, which you always have had. And you have a deep understanding of people. Which I think is really, really important, because what we're doing here, it is about fashion, it is about music, but it is about the people in fashion and music, and that's why I wanted you to do it.
Because no one really touches on that subject of, if we go back in time, which we will discover in this podcast as we go along in the series, that how the two go parallel, and sometimes the two cross over, and then sometimes they collide. Fashion and music collide sometimes, and when they do collide, that's when the world takes notice. So you've got Harry Styles at the moment, wowing audiences with what David Bowie did in the 70s.
Absolutely.
And every generation has a Harry Styles, they have a David Bowie, they have a Boy George. They have these mavericks that come along that combine the two. And everyone wants to look like Harry. Everyone wants, they're like, wow. And he they all work with different designers. Look at Elton John now. Still killing it. He's been around for so long, but yet he'll go to Alessandro at Gucci to get Gucci to design the whole collection and the whole show for his world tour. And, back in the 80s, we had Madonna in the 90s doing Gautier.
So some is so closely linked. Some is totally inseparable with a lot of those music artists. What Bowie did was incredible for fashion, but also, it helps propel his vision. It wouldn't have been the same without the visual. And it is 100%. Part of that, And the visual, of course, is what they wear, how they look, and what the clothes say about them. So, you're completely right. The Madonna, the Gautier, Gaga, who launched so many young designers just with her walk from the hotel to the limousine, that 5-meter walk, and she launches a new fashion designer.
It's insane. But that's when the world's taking notice. That's when that collision happens. So that's when it suddenly collides, and it's like, oh my God, it's like a bomb's gone off. And that's the magic. That's those it's like the spark to the gunpowder as such. That's those two things collide, create something so insane and beautiful.
And the world that people don't see, or most people don't see, is the world of the fashion photography studio. They don't see the models work. I can remember working with Giselle Bundchen, and she put on a Mary J. Blige track for 5 days. The same track, which sounds preposterous, but it was great. And she would move to that. And these models, these amazing models, you know, whether they're on the catwalk or whether they're in front of the camera, they are moving to a sound, they're moving to a beat, they're moving to an emotion. And that's what people don't really see. And part of that is what I want to bring, I guess, out in this podcast, you know, is what people perhaps don't know about the fashion world.
But what you just described was what happens on a dance floor.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. You people move to a beat. They know their sound. They know what makes them move. And that's when, you know, they're at their best and they're living their best life when they're listening to music.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's really important when we do this podcast that people understand the direction it's coming from and where it's going. Yeah. Because there's some batshit crazy people on this podcast, right?
Yeah. Well, other than just ourselves.
Other than myself.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are, and, you know, some of the people that we've got lined up are, you know, they're like bucket list people for me to talk to. You know, the Martin Roses of this world and so on, and the Karen Binns. There's so many different people from fashion that understand music and music that understand fashion. And it's going to be really interesting to go into their minds and actually ask them those questions. Because when you ask someone to write down their 10 favourite tracks that define their life within fashion, it's a really hard thing to do. Because I would, if you asked me that, I would want to impress you. I would be like, oh, right, he doesn't know this track. He doesn't know that track. And then that becomes uncool. Right. So I think what's going to unfold within this podcast is the fact that we will see who's honest and we will see who really understands their craft and where the magic comes from. And a lot will be revealed, I think, within this podcast.
I think so. I think if we were to be asked what we're trying to achieve with this, I would say we're trying to show the link between fashion and music, which is absolutely at the centre of it all. But on top of that, we're trying to show who people are. Trying to understand the people who are in fashion and music, trying to give them a little bit more, if you want, a bit more of a kind of, you know, insightful view into what makes them tick, what makes them do things.
Because, I mean, you know, on the whole, if you just had fashion on its own, it would be pretty boring without music. And if you just had music without fashion, without the visual of it, right? And we're not playing music on this podcast. No. Let's get that straight. We're not actually playing the tracks because what we've learned from previous attempts at doing this is that when you introduce the track that we're actually talking about within the list, it stops the conversation, the flow, the magic stops, the flow stops, because you're in the track, you go into the whole emotions change with that music. So what the purpose of not putting the music into this podcast is so that the conversation carries on. But you can download the podcast.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You listen to the conversation and
then you go to the playlist.
You go and listen to the playlist. And that's what I want to do. So when I listen back to the interviews that you've done, I want to go to the playlist. You know, when they describe what they were listening to as a kid, or when they describe what they have been playing in the studio, or what they dance or whatever it is, I want to go and listen to it.
We previously did a fashion radio project before, which we put the trailer out for, and we had Kate Moss, and we had Charles Jeffrey, Gareth Pugh, Kelly Osbourne. We had some amazing people, Carl DeVol, and the reason why we didn't put that out, right? We put a trailer out for it, but the reason we didn't put it out is because of the music content. Because it stopped and started. It became really complicated when we brought the music into the studio.
Which is strange because you think that would be the thing to do.
I think that would open them up. It doesn't. It was the opposite effect of it.
No, anything goes into listening and sort of getting into the music, actually not revealing why they do things or revealing things about themselves. This is a set of interviews about people in fashion and music. Really.
What's so good about it is that people feel really, really intimate within this space because there's not 20 people standing around with cameras. There's no great big lights. And I think the magic of this is the fact that it's you facing me, me facing you, and that's it.
Well, what people perhaps don't realise is SHOWstudio is an old church, and this is a bit of a confessional.
There you go. And with this, it's just that it's going to flow, right?
This is about people, and that became about music. And actually, this is about the people behind it.
Because I remember when we were doing it, I could see it in your face. You were kind of like, it was veering too much about the music, and it wasn't about the actual reason behind it. Do you know what I mean?
And the reason we wanted it, everybody knows the tracks, but people want to find out why they like it.
And what the link is. Amazing.
Great. Excellent.
There you go. Fashion radio in a nutshell.
Perfectly expressed.
All will be revealed.